Hello,
I'm
everybody,
moving.
and welcome to another episode of Work Dad. This is Brian Nemhauser. You can find me here on YouTube at Work-Dad, on Spotify, or any of your favorite podcasting networks for the audio version available there. And then on TikTok. I think it's TikTok by most accounts. TikTok and Instagram, workdad.io. And today's going to be fun. I'm really happy to see a former colleague of mine, Emily Corbin, who is a community manager at Adobe and has had a non-typical, non-standard way that she's gotten to that title and that job. And it's also an interesting job that I think a lot of folks don't really know about and what's entailed in it. So without further ado, let me welcome in Emily. Emily, good to see you.
Good to see you, Brian, and thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited to be talking to you and to your audience, and I definitely had a very atypical journey to a really awesome career in community management, so happy to tell you all about it.
Love it. Love it. Well, I will probably fall into calling you M through this because
That's
that's
okay.
how
That's
I've
my name.
always referred to you. But uh first, tell us what is your job now? What does it mean to be a community manager?
Yeah, I have a really unique and fun job. Community management means a lot of different things to different people in the community space. But for me at Adobe, I am there's a lot of aspects to it, but the most important is developing relationships with creative people that advocate for people to learn creativity, to learn how to use Adobe tools, and to empower them to share Adobe with their audiences, whether that's through a podcast, through a workshop that they're leading, through social media. That's the biggest way that our ambassadors share Adobe, and coming up with creative prompts to inspire them to talk to their audiences about different ways that Adobe can help them, whether it's through their creative workflows or business workflows. And I also do a lot of connection between Adobe and our ambassadors in terms of understanding customer sentiment, helping us build better products, make better experiences, keep us making a better product overall. So research and connecting the product team with our ambassadors. And then also one of the best parts of the job is doing community events. So getting people together for dinners and virtual coffee meetups, going to Adobe Max together. So it's a really fun job. I feel honored because my job means I get to meet some of the most inspiring creative people, whether they're marketers or illustrators, photographers, creative professionals, to meet them and then support them doing that thing that they're so talented at doing, and helping them to be freelancers or to continue working on their side hustle while they maybe also have another job. But yeah.
Love it. Love it. Well, so I'm going to break it down a little bit more. I mean, when you talk a community, what is it? Community for all of Adobe? Is it for specific products or specific types of,
Yeah.
creative professionals?
Great question. So my community is Adobe Express. So that's my primary focus, is through our ambassadors sharing Adobe Express. And that's, of course, how you and I met. We worked on the original Adobe Express, was once Adobe Spark. And we've gone through a lot of evolutions. So Adobe Express now is a product that's not only catered to marketing folks, but creative professionals. So some of that means getting people that are from the Illustrator or Photoshop world, or Fresco world, talking about how they fold in Adobe Express as part of their creative practice with those other more advanced Adobe tools.
Got
But
it.
yeah.
Well, so you manage the Adobe Express community, or you work the Adobe Express community, and you mentioned ambassadors a couple of times. What
Yes.
does that mean?
Yeah, so the ambassador program is what I charter. I started this program a little over 3 years ago, and I had 19 people at the time. And today we have over 250, and we
Wow.
have managers in Japan and in Europe running smaller programs there. And yeah, it's a group of really talented people, like I mentioned before, split down different segments. And we get to work with them on all of these fun projects every month and get them inspiring their audience. So that is what I do. It was a very interesting journey starting an ambassador program, because I actually didn't have much experience at all with ambassador programs when we launched this effort. And we've gone through a lot of evolutions and learned a lot, which I'm happy to share a little bit about what people want when it comes to community and what they don't want. I'd say the biggest change, positive change that we made from day one to where we are today is we started with an agency, which was great in the beginning because we needed a little bit of help getting ramped up. But one of the things I've learned in community management is that the word community is really important, and having an agency running your community doesn't always feel authentic. Having a contract that people have to sign and requiring everybody to have certain deliverables every month doesn't feel good. People want to feel that they genuinely want to be part of the community that you run, the program that you run. They want to feel like they have freedom to be who they are, to show up as themselves, to talk authentically to their audience. So the way we run our ambassador program is that nobody's in a contract. We have terms and conditions and guidelines that we share with everybody, but we invite people to join us for 12 months in this program. And we have the program on a hub where people can log in and explore activities and decide what they want to do and what they don't want to do. And then we're always there to brainstorm and to talk about people's ideas. I have ambassadors that go to conferences. I have somebody right now that's getting ready to go to VidCon and is going to run a panel about Express. And we have people that love doing things on, or have a YouTube live series that they do, and they want to brainstorm, how are some ways that I could talk about Express meaningfully in ways that don't necessarily fit with the challenges that I regularly provide. So I like to offer a lot of creativity in my program, that people can suggest their own challenges, their own ways that they talk about the product with their audience. Then always, go ahead.
Sorry, no, please go ahead. Finish your thought.
I was just going to say that a really important thing I've learned is to lean on the community when it comes to what I'm doing and ask them, what do you want to do? What would be meaningful to you? And not just come up with my own ideas, to really be intentional about listening to feedback when I offer a challenge, if it doesn't work for them, to hear their ideas for challenges, and also to let them be a source of who comes in and who becomes part of that community. So ambassadors are constantly referring other ambassadors, and that's what makes our community so rich, is that, ambassador referred other ambassador. We just have this amazing group from that process.
That's fantastic. So I think for some folks that could use a little bit more of a simple understanding of an ambassador. So is this somebody that already has some audience that they have influence with, and you're recruiting them or attracting them, or they're being referred to you to help their audience learn more about the product at Adobe Express? Am I understanding that right?
Yeah. So an ambassador, it's a combination. There's definitely people, especially in the beginning, when we started the program, we focused on people that were already evangelizing using Adobe Express. But as we've evolved the program, we also are looking at people from the lens of who's their audience, and would their audience be excited to try Adobe Express. And so we bring in people that have experience with other Adobe tools, or maybe no experience with Adobe tools, and we set up ways for them to get really comfortable, whether that's through trainings, sharing resources, helping them feel really comfortable. And then also we have net new people that we're adding that already know the product really well. And every quarter we have meetings where we talk about what's new, what's coming. We give people that behind the scenes look at what we're developing, so that they are really involved and they get excited. And when we do have something new to share, they're already kind of on the pulse of it.
Got it. Is this what you thought you'd be doing as part of your career?
No, it isn't, but I love it. And it's the perfect job for me because, as you know, I love people. And so when we worked together, I started as an admin, and it was a very interesting pivot for me. I'll just say, for your audience, if there are people listening that want to be in tech and don't know how to get their foot in the door, it felt like kismet. I had spent my career as a preschool teacher and in nonprofit management, and community was always at the core of who I was as a person. And I randomly saw somebody at a volunteer event and she said, "How's it going? What's going on with your career? And what's your dream?" And I said, "Well, I would love to work at Adobe, but that probably won't ever happen." And she's like, "Why would you want to work at Adobe?" And I shared that I wanted to be somewhere where I could inspire people or work on products that helped people be creative. She's like, "Funny you should say that. I just got promoted and I'm looking for a replacement." And long story short, I ended up not in that role, but in a different role, working with you as an admin. And in that journey, discovered how much I loved research and talking to customers and listening to people through our Facebook community and helping the product team understand the challenges, the needs, what was exciting the community about our products and what else we could do. And that evolved into running an ambassador program. And today, a really meaningful way that I'm still doing that research sentiment piece that I love so much is talking to ambassadors and asking them, "Hey, how does your audience feel about Adobe Express today? And what could we be doing better? How do you feel?" And just allowing them the space to be really authentic and real with how they're feeling, how their audience is feeling, and then sharing that back with our product team so that we can continue to be doing the right things. Sorry, you got my co-presenter here.
Well, I figured that for our listening audience, that was not Emily scratching her neck. It was her dog. So I love that. There's a lot of folks that have been interested at some point of figuring out how to break into tech, and
Yeah.
it's not easy to do. And coming from a background where, it wasn't like you went to school for computer science or got some, secondary degree or certification, you came in as an admin, and that's not something you had done before either. Is that right? Or
No, I hadn't. I mean, I'd done a lot of administrative type work and things that fit in with being an admin, that naturally transitioned me into the or made me good for the role. Things like organizing events and being hyper organized and being on top of meetings. But yeah, it was a very new role. And I was very grateful to have that opportunity, having not had that experience, and especially at a company as uh, set up as Adobe. But I think really the biggest thing I can say in terms of moving from admin work, pivoting into tech, moving into admin work, and then moving into now a community role, I was able to do what I did with a combination of having a lot of energy and excitement about trying different things. But it also came down to people like you and other managers that I had in the then Adobe Spark, now Express team, that said, "Well, as long as you can get your regular job done, you can do other things that are exciting to you." So that started with me wanting to bring in nonprofit customers and having conversations where I was able to bring the product team in and talk to our customers. And I think that that would be my recommendation for people, that whether you're already in a role and you want to pivot, it seems kind of obvious, but ask for opportunities to do the things that you're excited about, that you're interested in. Ask to shadow people, learn about the things that you want to do and try to get your foot in the door, and lean into your managers and the people in your team and ask them to support you in trying to make those pivots in your career, because that's really what allowed me to rotate into a community role.
Well, that's great advice, and I think there's a lot of pieces in there that we should spend a few minutes on. I've seen it time and again, folks that are really eager to break into tech or work at a specific company, but they're very restrictive about the types of jobs they're willing to start with. And
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of folks who, once you get your foot in the door and once you're able to build relationships in there, and once you're able to demonstrate that you're good at what you do and you're a credible person and reliable, opportunities start to open up. And you also kind of get first dibs on a lot of jobs because you see or hear about needs and can advocate for yourself in a
Yeah.
way that you can't from the outside. So, I saw that firsthand with you. I've seen that with others. Do you remember who your hiring manager was that brought you into Adobe?
Yes, it was George.
George
George Taylor.
Taylor. Shout out to George.
Yeah.
I believe George is still there at Adobe.
Yeah.
I miss that guy. I haven't seen him for a while. Uh, do you remember the conversations there that led to you getting the role in the first place? Was it pretty straightforward, or was there kind of a back and forth of, hey, is this the right fit, or is this the right person? Do you remember
Yeah.
that process?
I feel, and of course, I can't speak for George and Ben and you and the other people who were in my interview process and what went into making the decision. But I think something that is really special, and what was really special at the time that I got hired about that team, was it seemed like it was a value. People recognized that there was a lot of people that had EA background, executive assistant background, or senior admin experience that maybe already knew how to do the calendaring, already knew how to do all of those admin duties. But seeing that I could contribute and provide an energy to the team, I think was probably a determining factor of allowing me to step into a space. So I would also say, yes, there are some roles if you want to become a product manager, and there's some technical roles where, yeah, you do need to have some specific training and experience. But it's also about how you show up in those interviews and the eagerness that you show to learn, how you can relate skills from other jobs that are completely transferable, and how you can show that you'll add value to the community, how you're going to make people feel being part of their group. And we all go to work, we all need to work, but also we go to work looking for a feeling, looking for a community, looking for a family away from our family. And that's something that we really had working all together, is people supported one another. Of course, it was business and work, and you gotta put in the hours, but I definitely would say show up and be yourself, but show that energy and show what you're going to contribute, even if you don't have every single skill right then and there.
Well, one of the things that's interesting about that, is that one of my earliest lessons learned as a manager was I used to initially hire based off potential. I'm a big sports fan, and so
Yes.
I was always interested in the players on the team that were young and this isn't about how I'd hire, but like people that had not yet proven themselves and what they could be. And I saw their innate skills. And so I thought that's how I would approach management and hiring. I'd hire people that had all the necessary material, but maybe hadn't done the job yet. And
Yeah.
boy, that burned me. Like, it's not a good practice generally to hire on potential, because you're going to spend 6 months or a year or more, or maybe never, getting that person to actually get up to the point where they're performing that job well. And so I started to find ways to look for people that had already done the job, but also still were motivated to do the job.
Yes.
Because that's the other side of it, is you can get someone, and this is what showed up in your situation, is, there's a lot of folks that have done admin work that, I don't know if jaded the right term, but, they're a little hardened about the role, and they're not excited to do it, but they know that they can. And that's a certain, an admin in a team, like a well-positioned admin that is appropriately respected and integrated, is a huge, huge part of the culture. Like, every person that gets hired usually gets to know this person, or one of the first people that they get to know. Everyone that's trying to get anything organized, working across functional teams and whatever, is working with this person. And, I've been in teams where the admin is kind of like, oh my gosh, everyone's a little worried to ask something of that person because they're a little bit prickly, or they're so busy and you don't want to, put them out. But in your case, I think it was a combination of some of the other candidates potentially were a little bit more low energy, not necessarily going to be the culture fits in the same way. And two, you did have some transferable skills, but I think George, in my recollection, was largely just betting on you as a person and felt like you'd come in and really be motivated to do a lot. And that proved true. You became a huge part of the organization, and everyone rooted for you to, find I think pretty quickly people realized you weren't going to be an admin forever. And not that that would have been a bad thing, but that
No.
you wanted to do other things. And so, yeah, interesting little piece of your story there, and I think that matters for others.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing is that you mentioned kind of starting to do the job that you want before you have it, to some extent, and say a little bit more. So you were doing admin work, you were responsible for, a lot of people, and thankfully for you, you never had to be, an admin for me in my calendar or anything like that. I was awful. I've never had an admin manage my calendar because I think I would just be impossible. Like someone would schedule something and I'd be like, actually, no, I don't want to do it then. I would just be a mess. So I've always had to manage my own calendar, but you had a lot of stuff going on. And then you started to express interest in some other things. Is that right? How did that exactly work?
Yeah, I think the very first thing that I mentioned before is because I had just most recently come from the nonprofit space was somebody, I want to say it was through one of our colleagues, knew somebody in San Francisco where I was then based, who ran a nonprofit and was actively using Adobe Spark and had a lot of feedback and wanted to talk about it. And I identified this opportunity of, you know what, this might actually be really amazing to bring this person on site, to have a conversation with them, to let everybody connect with them. And that just continued. It went so well, and it gave me this little burst of confidence that I started to ask George, can I continue to do this? And that included other things connected to the nonprofit world, and then doing customer interviews through our insider community on Facebook that we ran. I also, one of the things I really, really enjoyed getting to do with that team was an ethnographic research study where we went across the United States and asked people about what creativity meant to them and getting to take part in that. So it was a combination of just having these ideas and being able to articulate the value and why I thought it would help the team for me to be able to do this, and having that support again from George and other people to be able to do that and to take flight doing that. And it just being able to continue to do my main job well and to being able to bring this new value was I was able to make the case down the road. Hey, are there opportunities? I'd like to maybe pivot outside of admin work because I do like it and I love what I'm able to bring to the team, but I can offer so much more. So you have to build your case, right?
For
And
sure.
that's what I did.
For sure. And this sounds like a very happy path, just kind of linear, and things just all clicked into place. Is that true, or would there have been tough parts along the way?
Oh, no, I mean, it definitely, I feel very positive about the process, and I learned so much over time working toward transitioning my role. But no, it definitely took a couple years. And a lot of it comes down to, as most people know in a business, there's only a certain number of, roles, and to create a new role takes time. So I had to exercise a lot of patience, but it ultimately did pay off. And everybody has their own journey. And sometimes you're going to be in a place where you have more potential and you want to do more. And it's the people around you don't make you feel like you don't feel that the people believe in you, or the transition's not happening fast enough. And I definitely would say it's important to listen to yourself. If you're in an environment where you don't feel that people around you want to see you grow and want to support you in becoming a better version of your professional business self, or if the opportunities just aren't there, you have to make decisions, right? But in my case, it felt worthwhile to wait. And yeah, and it's continued to evolve. Like I said, my role when I very first left adminning was called a customer experience analyst. And then it evolved. I think that was probably still my title. And then I was moved over to the community organization at Adobe. And that's when my role became a community manager, which is what's my title today.
Well, I mean, one of the things that strikes me with your path is you are consistently taking on roles that you haven't done before, and
Yes.
can't like point to requisite experience, and then are having to prove yourself in that role and learn on the job. And that's pretty stressful, or that can be stressful for
Yeah.
some folks. I've had some similar experience, and it has, I mean, some parts of it are stressful. Some parts of it are just like, well, that's what I want to do, so I'm going to go do it.
Yeah.
How much have you battled the imposter syndrome thing? Has it mostly just been, this is what I want to do and I'm excited to do it, and so I just do it and I don't think about it? Like, how has that been in your head?
That's such a good question. I will say the time in my career that I felt the most imposter syndrome was when I very first started, and I not the admin work, but when I started to try out new things and I was doing research, and I suddenly had to present in team meetings with 100+ people. I felt really nervous about presenting, and it was extremely helpful to have such a supporting team. People literally clapped in our meetings. You can testify to this, that people in our team meetings were just incredibly supportive, which helped me to develop that confidence and to be like, oh, I can do this. But when it came to moving into community, which at the time, like I mentioned before, I didn't know what running an ambassador program entailed. Yes, there was times when I felt nervous and when I was like, I don't want to mess this up. I don't actually know what I'm doing here. But that's where being excited and energetic and being willing to have conversations and do research comes into play. I started looking for information about successful ambassador programs and watching things about ambassador programs. One of the main programs I looked at was the Sephora program. That was my first point of focus, and just trying to understand and glean why people liked being in that program, what meaning they got from it, what were the rewards for being in it. And then I started, like I mentioned, with an agency and asking people as we went through that process, do you like this? What feels good? What doesn't feel good? And so I was not a perfect community. I'm still not. We're all constantly learning and growing all the time. But I think talking to people that have a foundation of experience is essential. And being part of, there's CMX is a community platform where people in the community management space meet and go to conferences and share skills. That's been helpful to attend some of those events. Also, finding people on LinkedIn that are in the community space at other companies that have years of experience and interviewing them. That's something I do every quarter for myself. I connect with other people in the community management space and I say, what does being a community manager mean for you? I had a really interesting conversation with Ronillo at Pinterest, learning about what they do and how they came into community and how they look at community. So challenging, not just getting into, okay, this works. The formula I figured out of being a community manager is working. I'm just going to stick to doing what I'm doing. It's constantly trying to challenge yourself, looking for more information, talking to the community that you lead, and trying to continue to evolve. So yeah.
That's a fascinating bit there of reaching out to other people on LinkedIn that do the role. Is that something that you just came up with on your own? Did someone recommend it? How did you start doing that?
No, it's actually really interesting. I mentioned earlier that I had done this ethnographic research study where we had traveled around and talked to people about creativity. And there was this really interesting person we interviewed in San Francisco. He was an aspiring fashion designer who lived with his family and was trying to break out and just do something completely different. And he was so energetic and so driven. And one of the questions that we asked him was, how did you learn about, the specific area of fashion that you want to get into? And how are you drawing inspiration and trying to figure out what your path looks like? And he said, I find people on Instagram, on Pinterest, through news articles, people I'm interested in, and I reach out to them on LinkedIn and I ask if I can talk to them. And I ask them very specifically in those interviews, what did you do to get to where you're at today? And what do you love about your job? And what do you not love about your job? And what would you like to be doing? And so he was gathering all this information and using it as a jumping off point to get to where he wanted to go. And I was like, that's a great idea. So I wish I could remember his name to give him credit, but that's what inspired it.
That's great. And do you feel like that's helped? You picked up things from doing that?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I feel like every conversation you have with somebody, you get different ideas on how they're doing community. Things as simple as rewards. So in the program that I run, one of the ways that we reward people, there's lots of things, including free Creative Cloud all apps, but also we give away, most ambassador programs, you give away branded swag, and that's a kind of a standard thing. I was talking to somebody and they said that the thing that their community loves the most is when there are rewards that come from people that are in the community. And since I have so many creative small businesses in my community, I've started that practice. So I will buy tote bags designed by ambassadors, art prints, things that they've designed, and books that they've written. And it's not only a nod to the people that are in the community and a celebration of the people that are in the community, but it's just fun for the people in the community to be able to cash in the points that they get through the activities that they do by getting something that another ambassador made. And it's a connecting point, because something I didn't mention about community and what is so beautiful about it, and if one of my ambassadors was on the call, I feel like they would share this with you, is that if you run a community the right way, your community becomes a community completely outside of the activities that you're doing with them through the business. So many of our ambassadors collaborate on projects. They have working partnerships, their friendships, they have friendships, they travel together. So having things that rewards, or hiring ambassadors to present to other ambassadors when we do community events, that's just an amazing way of getting people to connect and know each other and to celebrate the people that we have in the group.
Where does this love of kind of community organizing come from, and connecting with people in your past?
Gosh, that's a really good question. Well, I had no idea that community management was even a career up until a couple of years ago. That was one of the biggest things that I got from coming to Adobe, is learning so many different ways that you can be part of tech that I didn't understand when I was in college. But I think the root of it's a personality for sure, but also when I was growing up, volunteering and being part of community initiatives was something that always excited me. I was part of a group when I was in high school called Media Bomb, where we had a radio show and we would bring on young people that wanted to sing or perform or read their poetry. And that pivoted into these monthly events that I helped coordinate, where people could paint murals and perform in front of their peers, and there was a skate park. So that community and getting people to come together, getting people to network, helping people find their tribe has been part of my life since I was in high school. So it was really beautiful to discover that there's a way to do that as a career in a very
Where did
different way, but
yeah, it's a great connection. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in San Francisco. I am a rare San Francisco native. I actually, as you know, just moved to the Pacific Northwest. I had been in California my whole life. But yeah, I grew up in San Francisco in a time when San Francisco was very different than it is today. It was not techie, but it's evolved a lot. I love San Francisco. San Francisco, I always tell people, is another parent and a huge part of who I am today. But yeah.
And what kind of work did your parents do?
My mom was a nurse, a labor and delivery nurse, and then later on a nurse practitioner. And my dad was a gardener. He started the Striving, or he didn't start the Striving Arboretum, but he started the New World Cloud Forest at the Striving Arboretum in Golden Gate Park. My dad was an incredible gardener and had a huge passion for plants. And this is predating when they used to check everyone's shoes at the airport. My dad actually, a lot of the plants, if you ever visit Golden Gate Park and you go into the New World Cloud Forest, a lot of those plants from Oaxaca and Chiapas, my dad brought in his shoes. He snuck in the seeds in his shoes, and thankfully today we have a beautiful garden to show for it. So
Wow. Well, it sounds like in both cases, like hard work was a big part. Neither of those are easy jobs. Some of them
Yeah.
can be pretty intense jobs. Did that have any impact on you growing up, or leave an impression one way or another?
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, I think work was so different then. And my parents definitely, my mom worked at night and my dad worked during the day, and that's kind of how they balanced things. I think with both my parents, they really loved work and for very different reasons. My mom, a lot of the reason that she loved nursing was she was very empathetic and very caring, which I am also, and is also a very important skill to have as a community manager. Uh, and such a people person, my mom is. And my dad was just really passionate about what he did and about how important botany and plants were to people and to making beautiful green spaces. So that definitely inspired me in terms of thinking about a career that resonated with me and that reflected what I cared about. Um,
I'm curious. I mean, it sounds like in both cases, they like you saw parents who loved what they did,
yeah.
or had passion for what they did. Has that been your expectation, growing into your career, that you were going to love your work? That was, you would do something that you loved as opposed to just doing what you had to do.
Well, most of my work leading up to being at Adobe was things that I really felt passionate about, I cared about. Being in early childhood, working in nonprofit, working with families and community, that was super important to me. And that was part of my core human value. When I moved into to tech, to be really transparent, I didn't know what to expect. I had this idea in my head because as a San Francisco native, San Francisco was so different when I was growing up. It didn't have that tech influence. And there was a feeling when tech started to take over that there wasn't going to be a place for regular people anymore. And that social work and teaching and community uh, based jobs and blue collar was no longer going to be a thing. And that was really scary for a lot of people. I discovered something very different at Adobe. I felt that I was surrounded with people that had very similar values to me and that I really resonated with. I did not, though, think that I was going to, I felt, if I'm really honest, that adminning would be something that I could enjoy and that I could find value in. But I also really wanted to be able to afford to continue to live in the city that I grew up in and that I
Mm-hmm.
loved. And I didn't think I could do that and to have a family and to have certain things that I wanted for my life. I didn't think I could do that continuing the nonprofit space. But like I said, I was very happy to discover that I could like work, and I loved, I love, I will tell you, one of the things I love the most about my job is the relationships I've been able to build with my colleagues over the last 7 years that I've been at Adobe. And also that there's so many different ways, like you don't know, like we were talking about earlier, when you step into a company, you don't know what other opportunities there are for you and other things that you might discover that you really enjoy doing. When I think about my work at Adobe, I oftentimes think I will be either a lifer or be somebody that's there for many, many years, like you, where I just continue to find value in it. And right now, community is an amazing space for me, and I'm learning constantly, and this is where I want to be. But there's so many places in tech that you can go that a lot of people don't know. Corporate social responsibility, getting to find ways to connect the company to causes that matter and to the community in that lens. My colleague, Julia Tian, is doing incredible things. She is working with creators in places where there are wars and where there are major economic challenges, and she's empowering them, paying them to create beautiful art using Adobe tools. Diversity and inclusion is in a really amazing space. So there's just so many things that you just don't even know exist. And that's why you should, to some degree at least, go into the office and talk to people and learn about what people are doing and go to presentations that people are doing. If there are brown bag presentations at your company where people are sharing what they're researching, what they're working on, there's always more that you can do and discover.
I uh, I haven't talked to Julia in a long time, so please send my best to Julia.
I will.
I'm a big fan of hers for sure. I'm struck a little bit, by this, uh, the changing relationship people have with work over the last few years.
Yeah.
Most recently, there's been a lot of layoffs, and a lot of tech companies are kind of stripping away benefits that used to be like very luxurious benefits.
Yeah.
There's AI coming around that for some people is threatening jobs that they've felt for a long time were secure. And even before that, you had the pandemic and people working from home, and this, I think, changing of the way they see the world. Like, do I does this really have meaning when I'm doing? Like, what is going on with this? And then being asked to come back to the office in many
Yes.
cases, and that being an issue for. So there's this real like dynamic shift of people's relationship with work. And one of the things I'm hearing from you is work for you hasn't been, I'm doing this just because I have to. Work for you has been kind of a quest to find ways to marry your passions and your love of working, like being with people and collaboration and creativity with something that will pay you. Um,
Yes.
is that, has that changed at all with all the stuff going on over the past few years, or has that been pretty steady throughout?
I think the pandemic was so hard for so many people, and feeling isolated, and obviously seeing all of the struggle and pain that was happening around the world. And I'd say that what's happening, continuing to happen in the world, and there's just constantly different things that are challenging that can be hope dimmers and make showing up hard. But yeah, I think having that core feeling motivating you is really, really important. I am grateful that I'm able to have a balance in terms of going to the office and also working from home. I did discover that I work really well from home. Being able to have work life balance, being able to take my dog on a walk, being able to enjoy my neighborhood and not have to commute so much, but then also going into the office from time to time and seeing people and connecting with people and being able to continue those relationships. I think it's striking a balance. But yeah, I would say in terms of the root question, I think it's stuck with me. It's just like everybody else. I've been going through the ups and downs of just what's been happening in the world and having to continue to try to stay afloat. It's been a lot. And yeah, and there's, in terms of AI and economic up and downs, of course, there's those fears and there are those challenges, but just trying to be optimistic as much as I can has never hurt me. So
Yeah. Yeah. Do you stretch it into the future and think about, what you want to get from work that you're not necessarily now? Is it, are you thinking, oh man, I'd love to make more money, or I'd like to try this other skill set,
yeah.
or I'd love to continue to advance in this particular field, or I'd love to do what I'm doing somewhere else? And I'm not going to ask you to
Yeah, yeah,
out
yeah, yeah.
yourself there, but like,
Yeah,
do you
no.
have like thoughts around that?
I do. I think if money was absolutely no object at all, and maybe at some point in my life, I will go back into the nonprofit space. I don't know exactly what that looks like or what I would want to focus on, but I did really love being in the nonprofit space. But in terms of tech and where I'm at now, of course, I want to continue moving up in my career and becoming a better community manager. Ultimately, like I mentioned, some of the other areas that are interesting in tech, those are areas that I'm also interested in. I'd say, though, the community work I'm specifically doing of getting to work with really inspiring creative people and getting to support them in doing that has been incredibly meaningful for me. And shout out again to Julia. I feel that doing something like that would be something I would be. It's similar enough to what I'm doing now, but it's also very different. That I think that would be an area that I would definitely be interested in. But there's just so
Yeah.
much. There's so many interesting things. Who knows? I try to keep a pulse on all of the different careers that you can have in tech. And I've definitely explored, there was a period of time where I was getting a MicroMasters in user research, thinking that might be something I wanted to do. But ultimately, I think I'm too embedded in community to get too deep into research. But
Yeah. Well, is there something that you kind of look at to assess whether, when you look back on your career, when you look back on your life in 20, 30, 40 years, whatever it is, that you will have felt like it was time well spent? What are the factors that for you contribute to your assessing whether you're on track for what you want for your career?
I think that's a really good question. And I don't think I do that enough. And I think probably a lot of people are in that same loop of not giving themselves the time to think about it enough. I definitely don't have any regrets about where I'm at in my career, or think that I don't make myself feel bad that I haven't accomplished enough or that I'm not doing enough. I think that the most meaningful, if it hasn't come across already, the most meaningful thing I get from work is connections and the ways I've showed up and supported people. And I feel really good that I have and continue to do that. And I hear from people in my community, and it means a lot to me just how being in my program has impacted their life, whether it's that they've been able to get exposure and grow their audience, or it's allowed them to do new things. It helped them to fund projects and initiatives that they want to do, that it gave them confidence. That's my favorite, is when people tell me that the work that gave them confidence. So I think definitely when I look back at work, that's what I want to think about, is how did I help other people? How did I make an impact on somebody else's experience? Did I make them feel good? Did I help them in a positive way? I also think, though, that we all should be better about, and this is something I struggle with, is taking my mental, emotional, physical health very serious. And it can be really hard in tech. Sometimes there are long hours, there are sudden pivots, and there's some add-on, some campaign that suddenly has to happen. And it can be, you can torture yourself and overwork yourself. So I definitely think a mark of success is being able to have boundaries and have good work-life balance, and to be able to look back and be like, I didn't sacrifice the other things that make life meaningful. Because yes, work is an important part of all of our lives. It's 40 to 60 hours, depending on how much you put into it. That's a huge chunk of your life. But also, what else matters? Are you making time? Like, that's something I love about you, is that you have always invested in your passion projects, in your family, your wife and your children, and making sure that you're carving out the space for the people in your life that matter, and for the other things that in your life matter. For me, right now, I am not doing a very good job of that. And this is good, because now I am telling the world, you and the world, my goals. I have always wanted to, I paint. That's something I've done since I was very young, but I've always wanted to break into doing more graphic design type work, which I work on the perfect company to support that. But I have ideas around, I recently took a risograph workshop at Outlet PDX here in Portland and learned about risograph printing. And I also have these ideas around printing sun catchers, and to make prints that I can frame. And it's not going to be because I'm expecting to make a lot of money doing it, but it's just something that I want to do. To me, being able to identify things that you care about, whether it's your family or it's a passion, and being able to carve out the time to do it, that's a sign that you're doing things right, and something I need to do better.
So much wisdom, Emily Corbin. I love it. I love it. Well, I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you and highlight you is I see this a fair amount, or I've seen this a fair amount. You are someone who, you approach your career and your work and life in general very much from I think, a people-centric perspective, and I don't think you would feel successful in your career if other people had to fail for you to succeed, or
Yeah.
something along those lines. And I also have observed folks that approach their career as a game that you can win or lose, and that there are opponents that they can beat or be beaten by. And that is a caricature of corporate life. A lot of people think
Yeah.
about that as being who's in a corporate world or in these, and they certainly exist. There are a lot of them.
Yeah.
And what I've observed of those folks, and by the way, there's been times that I've fallen into that. Like, I certainly, wanted to advance and things of that nature. But that path generally leads to a dead end. Like, there's only so far. And then there's, for me personally, if I was to look back on my whole career and the biggest thing I had done was create the iPhone or create like something that the world thinks is amazing, but I had treated people like shit in order for it to happen, I personally wouldn't feel like that was a life well lived. That's just
No.
me. And other people would be like, you're crazy, or you could have made billions of dollars. And I'm like, yeah, that's not for me like success. And I see someone like you who can coexist in a world. And I've seen some of those folks who, want something yesterday and timelines, and they don't necessarily treat you with care and respect and kindness. And you've been able to find ways to stay true to who you are through that. And I have a ton of respect for that. And I think I want other people to understand that folks like that exist, and they can be more plentiful in certain companies than others. I certainly have found a lot of those folks at Adobe. So, I love your story, and I love how you're living it. And I love that you don't spend a lot of time beating yourself up about it.
Thank you.
So I think that's a good thing.
And thank you for saying that. That means a lot. That's a super high compliment. I get it. There's different cultures, different places have different approaches. And like I mentioned earlier, getting into my career and presenting and having people clap for me, I remember a colleague saying to me, that was so weird. People are so nice in this group. People clap, like, people don't do that at Facebook. Sorry, Facebook, or that particular team at Facebook. But, I think all of us have the potential. We should all show up the way we want to show up. And yeah, there are certain career tracks where being competitive is more part of what you have to do. But if that's not who you are, there are other ways to advance yourself, and showing up and being authentic and being the kind of leader you want to be is one of your most powerful super skills that you can bring. Like, you don't have to just copy somebody else's style. You can be your own, and you might inspire other people. You can be that person in your team that inspires other people to show up in a different way. I have a coworker, Ellen Lavoie, who every time I'm in a meeting with her, there's just something about her that's contagious. She's so contagious in the best kind of way. She is so smart and so organized and keeps people on track, and is definitely she gets all of the business done. But she makes people laugh. She makes people in the room feel that they're welcome there, that they have something to contribute. She makes everybody laugh and smile in these settings where sometimes we're all really, it's early morning, we're in a meeting, everybody's tired. Finding people in your workplace like Ellen that you can look to and find inspiration, I think, is a great practice for all of us.
Yeah, it is. Finding your people within the company is great. And I think you've also brought up this notion of, you find the right place to break in. It's like getting an apartment in a new city, and there's a lot of neighborhoods to explore. There's a lot of, flexibility and mobility that can come from that. And you've certainly demonstrated that. Well, Emily, thank you so much for sharing your story and spending some time with us during your week. Hopefully it won't be the last time we'll get to chat like this. And next time I'm down your way, we'll have to go out and grab a bite, grab a drink,
yes,
something like that.
I would love that. And thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor, and just You're awesome, Brian. I'm so glad that you're bringing this to your community and helping inspire people, because we all need this. So
Thank you, Emily. Everybody, Emily Corbin. Where can people find you, Emily, if they want to follow along with the community work or Adobe Express or anything like that?
Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, this is quite embarrassing because I just recently changed my Instagram handle, and it's a little bit hard. It's not as straightforward as it used to be. It's Emmy, EMMY _ and it's French. It's Dans, and I don't speak French. This is why it's kind of ironic, but it's Emily and the Flowers in French. So Emmy _ DANSLESFLEURS. Emily Dans the Flowers.
Love
so
it.
That's where I am. And yeah, I'm looking forward to staying in touch with you. And if anybody listening to this is interested in the community space, wants to talk, needs anything, you can also find me on LinkedIn, Emily Elizabeth Corbin. That's probably what I should have led with. But yeah.
Thank you so much. And that has been another episode of the Work Dad podcast. I'm Brian Emhauser. You can find us on Work-Dad on YouTube, on Spotify, or any place you get your audio podcasts. And then on TikTok and Instagram at workdad.io. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We will see you all again next week.